It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
For the first time in a very, very, very long time, it is a series winning edition of Rico Brogna. Episode number 508. The New York Mets win a huge rubber game against the Milwaukee Brewers. They win a series against the team they very well may be battling with for a wild card spot. They win a game to win a series for the first time since they swept the Washington Nationals many series ago. And for the first time in a very long time, if you're a Met fan, you can put your head down on a pillow and at least feel decent. I'll say feel decent. I won't say feel great. I won't say we've cured all the evils of this team, but it is very nice to win a series against a good team. And they did it following the formula that really got them here. You know, they didn't win these two games because they scored a ton of runs. They won these two games because they pitched really well. And in the finale of this series against Milwaukee, the most encouraging thing was how good David Peterson pitched. David Peterson had back-to-back bad outings. And I think it's only natural that when a guy has back-to-back bad outings after looking like an ace for almost a year, it's fair to wonder, is he healthy? I think that was my concern. I think it was a lot of our concerns. And David Peterson went out, and while his command wasn't perfect, he went out, he made the big pitches when he needed to, inducing a couple of big double plays. He worked around an atrocious error by Brett Baty and was able to deliver something really important to this team, and that's outs in the seventh inning. Can you imagine? Outs in the seventh inning. And when you look at this rotation, and for now, Sean Manaea doesn't exist until he re-enters the rotation, the only guy who's capable of doing that on a somewhat consistent basis, getting outs in the seventh inning, is David Peterson. So let's start with him because this bullpen needed it. This rotation needed it. And if they were going to win this game against Milwaukee, they weren't going to pound Jose Quintana, which they didn't do. They weren't going to pound the Brewer bullpen. They weren't going to put up a crooked number. They were going to have to win a low-scoring game, and that's exactly what happened as they beat the Brewers by a final score of 3-2. David Peterson, in a lot of ways, his most impressive moment came getting through the fourth inning, in which Brett Baty really had a chance to light this game on fire. You know, the Mets get the early run on the Brandon Nimmo home run, and don't worry, we'll spend a lot of time talking about Brandon Nimmo. He is certainly a prime candidate for the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. The lineup change, the lack of a lineup change in game 3. We'll get to all of it. But Brett Baty made a horrific defensive play with one out and a runner on first in the fourth inning. And the Mets protecting this 1-0 lead. Rhys Hoskins hits a line drive right at Brett Baty, and I don't know what the hell happened. Ball basically went through his glove. And so what could have been a double play, but at minimum would have been 2 outs and a runner on first base, turns into this huge Brewers scoring opportunity where eventually Caleb Durbin, who was a real pain in the ass in this series, or a pain in the ass in this game, I should say, kept putting bat on ball, makes the weak contact, drives in a cheap run to tie the game up at 1. And with the way the Met offense was really struggling against Quintana outside of the Brandon Nimmo home run, it felt like, all right, we're ready for a slow death march. That's what we're going to watch. We're going to watch the Mets struggle to score runs. Eventually, late in the game, Joey Ortiz will hit a big home run, kind of like game 1. And we're going to lose this game 4-1 or 4-2. But credit to David Peterson, because even after Durbin hit that weak grounder to tie the game, he got a huge strikeout against Eric Haas, which was monstrous. And then I thought the fifth inning was another big moment in this game because he gave up a leadoff double to that pain in the rear end, Joey Ortiz. And with a runner on second and nobody out, it felt inevitable that Milwaukee was going to take that lead in the top of the fifth inning. He gets a ground out against Monasterio where Vientos made a decent play. And then Pete Alonso was tested. And I don't know if Salas said this on the midday show, but I'll say it here on the Rico. Every time Pete Alonso makes a successful throw, I'm now texting him to say that was a good throw by Pete Alonso. Just so it's on record. Because while Pete had his struggles, no question, no questioning the struggles he had, the injury to Kodai Senga, the play at the plate against the Yankees. Like, we get it. Pete Alonso has had his issues throwing home or throwing to first base with the pitcher covering. Nobody's denying that. I'm not making excuses. But over the last 2 weeks, there's no denying that Pete has made every throw. And I think what's unfortunate, call this a defense of Pete Alonso or call this just the reality of baseball, we make such big deals on the bad play and then we ignore the good plays. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't mention the bad plays, because the bad plays can cost you a game or it can cost you a player, as was the case in Kodai Senga. But I do want to acknowledge that Pete, since then, what appeared to be a mental issue, throwing to first base or throwing to the catcher, has been a non-existent problem. And one thing about Milwaukee, and you could see it in this series, they don't pound you. They don't have a lot of 850 OPS players. They got a lot of guys who put the bat on the ball. They will hustle. They will try to take the extra base, and they're going to try to force you to make a play. It's kind of crazy to think about it. The Milwaukee Brewers have a team batting average very similar to the Mets. The Milwaukee Brewers have hit 30 to 40 less home runs than the New York Mets, but they've scored a half a run more. So you try to add that all up, and you got a Brewer team that's going to force you to make a play. So when Sal Frelick hits that ground ball to first base in the fifth inning, runner on third, contact play, and so Joey Ortiz is running, as that ball is fielded by Pete, I got this feeling in my stomach. Oh my God, please, Pete. For my own psyche, for all of our own psyches, make the throw to the plate, nail the lead runner, keep the game tied, but more importantly, keep our sanity that you're not going to be a complete bastard case when it comes to throwing home or throwing to first base. And Pete Alonso made a perfect throw. And Luis Torrens applied the tag. And that was a huge moment, because David Peterson got the ground ball, which he's so adept at. And Pete Alonso was able to make the play. No rush, no overthinking it, no mental issues, just throw home and get the lead out. And that was a very, very important play. And the other important play, I thought, was the aggressive base running of Starling Marte and Francisco Lindor, who's clearly responded to being the two-place hitter. That sequence in the sixth inning when Marte gets an infield hit, Lindor is behind the count, just flicks his bat at that ball and kind of touches it, and luckily gets it past Monasterio in a right field. And I wasn't sure Marte was going to go first to third. But that is kind of like what the Brewers do. Hey, go put some pressure on them. Go try to take the extra base. If they throw you out, you may have to tip your hat. Now, I don't know if I'd be saying that with Juan Soto coming up, but I guess it's easy to say it since Starling Marte did go first to third on that little base hit by Francisco Lindor. And that was huge. I mean, that sequence right there was very little ball. One out, nobody on. Marte hits a little grounder up the middle, beats it out for a base hit. I think that was the play where Rhys Hoskins came off first base, and they were thinking about challenging it, but he clearly came off of first base. Lindor's behind in the count, flicks it to right field. Marte goes first to third. And then Juan Soto comes up with a chance on his Jersey night to be heroic with runners in scoring position. And it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, because honestly, if the ball is hit 6 inches to the right, it's an inning-ending double play, and there's a chance Juan Soto's hearing boos on his Jersey night. But luckily, baseball is a game of inches. It was not a double play. It was not 6 inches to the right. It was a base hit to right field. And so essentially, Juan Soto on his Jersey night drove in the lead run. Pete Alonso on the very next pitch, so due for a home run, ripped the ball that I thought off the bat had a chance to get out. It settles for an RBI double. And you're feeling good because it's 3-1 Mets, bottom of the sixth inning, even though you are looking and wondering, okay, how much further can David Peterson go? How available is Edwin Diaz after a 4-out save? Who gets the eighth inning? Like, will Mendy go back to Reed Garrett? Will he trust Ryan Stanek? Obviously, we got those answers. But in the bottom of the sixth inning, let this not be forgotten, they had second and third and 1 out, and it was 3-1. And I'm certainly sitting there, and I said it to my son who I took to the game, we need to score these runs. Like this at minimum needs to be 4-1. Second and third, one out. You cannot leave these guys on base. And I know this is going to sound like I'm picking on Nimmo. Again, Brandon Nimmo is a prime candidate for the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series, so he will get the bouquet later. But he strikes out looking on a borderline pitch when, honestly, Brandon, can you hit the ball to the outfield? I mean, that's all you got to do here. I'm not asking for another home run. Hit the ball to the outfield. And then Mark Vientos, who did give you a nice, clean single in the fifth, which was great to see since Vientos has done nothing since coming back from the IL. He, too, had a chance. Big moment, break the game open, and he strikes out looking. And there was a little pit in my stomach thinking, is this going to come back and bite them in the ass? 3-1, second and third, one out, Nimmo and Vientos up. You don't get any more runs in. It felt like a missed opportunity. And it really felt like a missed opportunity the next inning when Andrew Monasterio hit the solo home run to make it a one-run game. So when I say this was very similar to the early season formula, I mean all of this. Like, they relied on their pitching. They got a couple of clutch hits. I'm not going to deny it. You know, Brandon Nimmo's tone-setting home run in the second inning was big. Obviously, Soto and Alonso back-to-back driving runs in to give them a 3-1 lead. But much like we saw a lot earlier this season, there was offense left on the board. There were 2 runs, really 1 run, that needed to be scored, and they failed to do it. As far as Mendy and David Peterson, so David's pitch count was at 91 through 6 innings, and he had to work hard. Other than the third inning, Peterson did not have any 1, 2, 3 innings. He was putting guys on base every inning, and in that 6th inning, the previous inning, he gave up the leadoff hit, got a big double play, hit a batter, and then got an out. So he had put multiple guys on base before working through the 6th inning. But with the bottom of the order coming up, I thought it was a good decision to keep David Peterson in. It goes back to, if you missed episode 507, we did a drive home after the second game of the doubleheader, and we talked a little bit about Mendy's decision in game 1 with Clay Holmes, where I get it. His pitch count's over 90. I get it. There's 1 on, there's 1 out. How much further is Clay going in this game? But I thought that there are circumstances where sometimes you should push your starter a little bit more. When you have a bullpen right now that is in tatters, and we'll get to all the injuries a little bit later on as well. A lot to discuss on this, Rico. I think sometimes you got to push your starter a little bit more. So at 91, bottom of the order coming up, I completely agreed with it. And my attitude was, let me see how many outs I can steal. If he can get through the 7th inning, we'll have another discussion for the 8th inning. I don't know. But let me see what you can do to get through the 7th inning. And what Peterson did against the bottom of the order, Haas and Ortiz, is he not only got outs, he got quick outs. He barely broke a sweat. He only threw 8 pitches to get those 2 outs, or 7 pitches to get those 2 outs. So it really looked like David was going to get through the 7th inning. Unfortunately, and it really came out of nowhere, that's when Monasterio hit the home run to make it 3-2. At that point, with Frelick, the lefty, up, I was right along with Mendy. Keep him in, top of the order. He'd gotten Frelick out 3 times. It's lefty. That's your last batter. If you get him out, great, you completed 7. If you can't get him out, unfortunately, I got to go to the bullpen, and you could see the flowing blonde hairs of Ryan Stanek being the guy warming up, and it shows you the crazy evolution of bullpens. After Edwin Diaz, who clearly we all trust, Ryan Stanek's probably number 1 in the circle of trust right now, which is a depressing state of the circle of trust. And we know with Stanek, he can blow it at any moment. But, I mean, where else do you want to go? Lovelady or Waddell? Brazoban, who certainly I think was available despite opening the previous game. You want to go to the namesake, Rico? Want to go to Rico Garcia? I mean, so Ryan Stanek truly is, unless you want to believe in Buteau or Austin Warren, who pitched well a couple days ago, Stanek's the guy. So I was right along with Carlos Mendoza in terms of once he gives up that little infield hit ahead of the count, that sucked that Peterson gave up that base hit because it would have been great to get to a clean 7. I think you clearly go to Stanek, and Stanek got a little lucky as Contreras lined it right at Mark Vientos. But Ryan Stanek in the 8th inning, in which I hesitated because the 8th inning featured the heart of the Brewers order. And so I was going back and forth in my mind because usually the mindset I have is, well, it's the heart of the order. Let me go to my best reliever. Let me go to Edwin Diaz for the 8th inning. The problem is if you go to Diaz in the 8th, A, you've just taken Stanek out after one batter. So now you've lost the guy who could potentially get more outs. And B, I'm looking at the bottom of the order, and I'm saying the bottom of the order is basically the heart of the order because they've got Yelich, and they've got Terang, and they got Jake Bauers, and you're going to see all of them. So based on that, again, I agreed with Carlos Mendoza, keep Stanek in. Try to get outs from Stanek. Would I go to Diaz for another 4-out save? I would. I think this was a huge swing game. I think it was a big game for a lot of reasons. And I bring up the tiebreakers a lot, but tiebreakers matter. And the Milwaukee Brewers very well may be a team the Mets are battling with for not even just a playoff spot, but let's even look a little bit more optimistically. Maybe they're tied as division leaders, and that tiebreaker determines who has a first-round bye. Now, I'm not saying Carlos Mendoza is necessarily thinking about that, but I am, and that's why I want this win. Tomorrow, the day after, be damned. You worry about the Yankees when you get to the Yankees. It is about tonight. And Ryan Stanek, in the opportunity he was given against the heart of the order in the 8th inning, definitely entered the circle of trust. He strikes out Churio. He strikes out Hoskins. He strikes out Isaac Collins. And Stanek with that animalistic roar coming off the mound. So brilliant inning from Ryan Stanek. And for now, again, showing you the crazy nature of bullpens. If you're ranking the guys you trust after Diaz, it's Stanek. Sucked again that in the 8th inning they couldn't add an insurance run. Another moment where Brandon Nimmo came up with guys on base. Brandon Nimmo in the last 2 at-bats he had left 4 guys on base, 3 of them in scoring position. I'm getting this all out of the way because, trust me, we'll give platitudes to Nimmo a little bit later on. But that ninth inning was about the continuing domination of Edwin Diaz, but more importantly, it's about Luis Torrens. Luis Torrens has not hit. He has not hit, including bouncing into a double play in the 5th inning. He has not hit since Alvarez went down. And I've certainly made the point that while I like Luis, he's a backup catcher. And I do think he's exposing that. He's a backup catcher. But one thing he does so incredibly well is stop a run game. And with Edwin Diaz, who I know he's tried, but Edwin Diaz, who gets run on constantly, the perfect anecdote for Edwin is Luis Torrens. Because how many times now, and we got to look this up because I remember 3 off the top of my head right now. How many times have guys been caught stealing with Diaz on the mound? It's actually remarkable considering this is his biggest issue, Edwin Diaz, holding guys on. And I don't know if he's truly gotten any better or if it's more the fact that Luis Torrens is so electric at shutting down a run game. But with 1 out and a runner on first, Christian Yelich, who hit that little ground ball that found the hole. Basically, they shifted him, hit a ground ball to regular third base. It was too far over for Vientos. Even if he ran it down, he wasn't going to throw him out. But you see Yelich try to run on Diaz. Totally makes sense. Edwin's good to run on. And Luis Torrens somehow makes that perfect throw. Great tag by Lindor. Obviously, they initially called him safe. We sat there for the instant replay review, and they got it right. You could see it's very close, but Lindor's glove is applying the tag on Yelich as he's sliding into second base. It is such a difference maker, having Luis Torrens behind the plate, more so with Edwin Diaz on the mound than any other moment, because that's his bugaboo. And it's unfortunate that, if you are going to let guys run on you, the chances of you blowing a save just grow higher because it's so much easier for your opponent, whether it's a leadoff walk or what have you, to get a runner in scoring position. But Luis Torrens has shut that down. Absolutely great play by Torrens. And I think at that moment, we all knew Edwin's going to shut the door. And Edwin has shut the door. It goes kind of a little underrated throughout this stretch where this team has struggled. because why are we going to appreciate anything when things are bad? Edwin Diaz needs to be appreciated because Edwin Diaz is having a ridiculous, ridiculous season. I'd almost start to say is the key phrase, that this is starting to feel like what we saw in 2022, a year that you figured would not be replicated. But he has been flawless. He's also cut down on putting the leadoff man on, which he did a lot early this season. And you look at some of his splits over his last bunch of performances. I mean, it's crazy. Remember, he gave up a couple of runs early. He had that implosion when they brought him in against the Marlins in the ninth inning of a relatively close game, and he gave up a bunch of runs. But his ERA in his last 15 games, 15 innings, 1 earned run, 24 strikeouts, a 0.60 ERA. And if I go back further, I'm sure it's even better. So Edwin Diaz, very underratedly, has been incredible. And it changes the complexion of a bad bullpen. Because when you look at this Met bullpen right now, especially with the injuries, especially with Reed Garrett hitting hard times, there really isn't many guys you trust. But when you've got a guy at the back end of games, and sometimes it's 4 outs, like we saw in game 2 of the doubleheader. So it's not always just 3. Unlike some other closers in baseball who are not asked to get more than 3 outs, Edwin Diaz is, and he's been damn effective at it. Is he going to blow a save at some point? Probably. I don't think it's going to be a completed perfect season. The key is when he blows a save, hopefully it's not some horrible moment. Hopefully it's not one of those games that feels bigger than others. If you're going to blow a save, Edwin, do it in a 5-game winning streak and blow the save, but then win the game anyway, which is always an option. So this is a good win. I feel very good about this series win. I'm not going to sit here, though, and lie to you that all the issues with this team have been cured, because that's not the case. Like, their offense is still leaving a lot on the table. This offense scored 3 runs. They won the finale of this series because they pitched so well. Even go back to game 2 where they went out and scored 7 runs. Yeah, 5 of them occurred in the second inning. 4 of them occurred on 1 swing. So even when they score runs, it's not the continuous flow that I think, or at least I thought, this offense was capable of. So they're not all the way back. Obviously, there are holes all over this rotation. On Thursday, before the Mets played the Milwaukee Brewers, we got the news around Paul Blackburn, who's going on the injured list, and the devastating news with Dednel Nunez, which I hate to say it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise. If you listen to the Rico Brogna a lot during the offseason, in spring training, when we talked about Dednel Nunez, we acknowledged how careful the Mets are with him. Even in spring training. Like, he had a full offseason recovery, and they were so careful with him. It almost felt like they knew his elbow was a walking time bomb. And they wanted to be careful, but they also wanted to see if somehow they could kind of hold it together and get something out of him. He didn't make the team under the guise of he needs more time. Let's kind of see if he can pitch on back-to-back days. He doesn't pitch great in AAA. The only reason he ended up getting called up is because the Mets have needed 1,000 different arms. That's why he got called up. And he had shown moments over the last week where you're like, oh, maybe we can see the old Dednel Nunez. And unfortunately, in his last outing, game 2 of the doubleheader, in which he came in to try to clean up Blade Tidwell's mess, and actually did a pretty good job getting the last 2 outs, gave up a hit, got a ground out, got a strikeout. That's when apparently he felt the soreness. And here we are in a position where it looks like he may need Tommy John surgery. And that sucks for him. Does it change the Met bullpen? I can't say it does, because I don't think he had ever really earned his way back to what he was last year. He'd only thrown 9 2/3 innings. He'd appeared in 10 different games over the course of, I think, 3 different call-ups. So it's not like he had really entrenched himself back in the bullpen, but it's unfortunate for him. The Blackburn thing complicates stuff because they need starters. Like, look, here's the thing when a guy struggles, and I know a lot of fans feel this way. I have felt this way a lot. A guy struggles, and you're like, get rid of him. DFA him. The problem with DFAing certain people is you need to replace them. So we now live in a world in which Paul Blackburn only made the handful of starts. They were not great, obviously. And now he's not going to pitch because he's hurt, and they got to replace him. And that's easier said than done because Paul Blackburn is at least the guy, despite the bad numbers, despite 3 of his 4 starts being mediocre to bad. Where are they going? And that opens up the situation they face in this Subway Series where Friday is clearly going to be an opener and Justin Hagenman and no Diaz and no Static. I mean, think about the availability in game 1 of the series against the Yankees. Diaz won't be available. No way. He's pitched back-to-back days. Static, I assume, is not going to be available. And you're going to pitch in what is likely to be an opener situation where maybe Brazaban throws an inning, and then here comes Justin Hagenman. I mean, if there is ever a time for this offense to wake up and score a lot of runs to actually lead the Mets to a victory, it'd be game 1 of the Subway Series against Marcus Stroman. Because game 1 is a hell of a challenge because they don't have pitching. I mean, it's basically a quadruple A game. It's going to be triple A pitchers like Brandon Waddell and Justin Hagenman and Rico Garcia being asked to get outs against the Yankees. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Saturday's Frankie Montas. Who the hell knows what to expect? 1 start was good. 1 start was terrible. And then Sunday, if I had to guess, I think it's going to be Brandon Sproat. And the reason I think that is even though they have an off day on Monday, I think Mendy realizes the opener bulk thing is a very unsustainable process. Sproat isn't going to go deep into the game necessarily, but at least you could throw him out there and maybe get 5 innings. So if I had to guess, and the Mets have not given us clarity on this as we record episode 508 after beating the Milwaukee Brewers, my guess is the Mets are going to try to win a Subway Series with Hagenman as the bulk guy on 4th of July, with Frankie Montas against his former team. And then I'm going to guess Brandon Sproat on Sunday. And I'm guessing because they just don't have many other options. So their rotation is in shambles. The good news is, because there is actually good news, is that Manaea is close and even Senga may be close. That it may only take 1 rehab start from Kodai. Remember, he got hurt on June 12th. So we're talking about really 3.5 weeks. It's not a long period of time that Senga's been out, so he doesn't need that much rehab. So it's possible they could get Senga and Manaea to each make a start before the All-Star game. And if that's the case, if that is the case, even if it's just one of them making a start, you can kind of piece your way to the All-Star break with a limited rotation because right now their rotation features 3 guys. Clay Holmes, who's fine, just doesn't go very deep into games. Frankie Montas, flip a coin in the air. He's only made 2 starts. Who knows? And David Peterson. When they can get to Manaea and Senga, at least you get to 5. But remember this, and this is why I do want to see Brandon Sproat up here. I would have loved to have seen Nolan McLean. Nolan McLean pitched on Friday, so the Mets could have scratched him, and they could have pushed on Thursday, I should say, not Friday. I think July 3rd felt like a Friday because of 4th of July, but Nolan McLean pitched on Thursday. The Mets knew about the injuries. They could have scratched him, and McLean could have pitched Sunday, or he could have pitched Friday. But David Stearns, I should say, said when he met the media on Thursday, he doesn't want these kids to be one-offs. I disagree with him. I don't think there's anything wrong with calling up Nolan McLean or a prospect to make a spot start. If anything, it's an easy sell to him. Listen, kid, you're getting a great opportunity to pitch. Don't look into it. Even if you're great, there's a good chance you're going back to the minors. But because Senga is coming back, and that naturally leads to a 6-man rotation, or at least finagling the rotation to make sure he has extra rest, you're going to need a 6th guy. So whether it's Brandon Sproat or it's Nolan McLean, Blade Tidwell is obviously still a part of this. He did a decent job in his last game. You could use one of those guys making starts for this team coming out of the All-Star break. But assuming there are no setbacks with Manaea and Senga, it does feel like the Mets can somehow bridge themselves over the next 9 games in 10 days to the All-Star break. They could actually have a reasonably healthy rotation. So that's the positive. But, man, every day guys are going down with injuries, and that part is very frustrating. Let's get to some of your emails, and then we will pick our Rico, I'm the man now, star of the series, and our net negative. I noticed this on Thursday, and I said something out loud to my son. He was confused. But I did receive a few emails confirming this thought I had about Lindor's walk-up music. Benjamin Weiss writes, Lindor seemed to drop Ain't No Mountain High Enough as the off-cycle walk-up music, leaning on My Girl for each at-bat. He's definitely been hitting better. Maybe the spark you were looking for. All I know is 2 big wins and a fan favorite to boot. Yeah, no, I noticed the same thing, but I didn't notice it until Thursday, so for those that pay closer attention to it, it does feel like Francisco Lindor ditched Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Mike Dingman writes, same thing. Did Lindor switch back to My Girl full time and we all just glossed over it? Or did I just miss it? That's from Mike Dingman. I assume that it just happened recently because I didn't notice it till Thursday. And now there are numerous emails saying, hey, did you just pick up on this? So I think this is a recent Lindor thing. Obviously, dropping to the 2-hole is new, which started in game 2 of the doubleheader. And dropping Ain't No Mountain High Enough is a new thing. Volvo writes, is Hoff drunk again? I don't even know what this is about. Hoff has not said a word yet here on the Rico, and yet Volvo wants to know if you're drunk again. So, Hoff, I ask you, any guesses why Volvo thinks you're drunk right now?
Because I did a WFAN daily prior to this Rico Brogna, and I basically said that, well, first of all, my tweets have been very sarcastic. I said that Pete was very unclutch, that he's awful at throwing the ball to home. They need to, so that was legitimately sarcasm. But I also said too, you can't overturn that call at second base. You can't do it. Like I understand they got it right technically. Like when you still frame it,
why can't they overturn it?
Well, because it's kind of cheap.
Why is it cheap? You don't think he was out?
I think it was too close to call. I really do. I think it was too close to call, and on the field it was safe. I don't think they could overturn it. Let me put it this way: if that was against the Mets, if Lindor slid or Nimmo slid, and they overturned that, I would have gone crazy over that.
Well, I think you'd be wrong because I think as close as it was, and it was very close, I think he was out. I think it showed that he was out. I mean, at least on TV at Citi Field, they show Lindor's glove against Yelich before his hand hits the base. So it was a very, very close play, but I do think he was out. By the way, you're wrong. That's not why Volvo thinks you're drunk. He thinks you're drunk because, quote, Mets win much-needed series over Brewers. What sort of title is that? So he's ripping the way you titled the Rico Brogna.
But didn't they need to win the series?
I agree with you.
It was pretty important. I mean, we could have gone into a Subway Series where the Mets haven't won a series in like a month almost.
Now, this was a big game. I always like to say there are certain games early in the calendar that are bigger than others. I thought the Yankees had a very big game that they just lost. That was a huge swing game against the Jays. Like losing 3 out of 4, maintaining being in first place is monstrous compared to what just happened. And throw the tiebreakers in there too. And I thought this Met game certainly qualified for a myriad of reasons. This was a really important game. Rubber game of a 3-game series, chance to win a series, a team that you may be competing with for a wild card spot. Who the hell knows the way this season's going to go? So on a lot of levels, I agree. Charlie writes, lineup shift. Guys, I want to say I really like what Mendy's done with the lineup for many reasons. We know that both Nimmo and Marte, but mainly Nimmo, hit better the higher they are in the lineup. So putting them at leadoff could really help their stats. Lindor is now protected by Soto again, where he did really well earlier this season. However, Soto can stay in the 3-hole where he's been raking recently. Also, I acknowledge that Terrence is the rightful starter as he should be. However, something inside me tells me that Hayden Senger has serious potential. Well, I think Hayden Senger is definitely going to continue to get the once or twice a week opportunity, and we'll see if he can impress. That's for sure. Raymond writes, outs in the 7th inning. You are 100% right, Evan. Getting outs in the 7th inning, wow. They should stop the game and have a ceremony and then have a parade. Tom Seaver pitched 61 complete game shutouts, but we can pretend that never happened. And Alonso made a good throw. Wow again. His next line is political, so I'm going to stay away from it. But Ray, couple of things. Number one, in this day and age, okay, it's a different sport. We all acknowledge that years and years ago, Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson and Juan Marichal would go deeper into games. In fact, I think the anniversary just passed of one of my favorite random baseball games in the history of baseball, and that was the Juan Marichal game in which he pitched 14 innings. But here's the thing, Ray. It's a different world. So me celebrating or being excited that David Peterson pitched into the seventh inning has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that years ago, Warren Spahn and Juan Marichal pitched 15 innings against each other. You know what I mean? Like, let's put that aside. You know, Brian Wu of the Mariners is on this incredible streak where he's thrown 6 innings in like 16 straight starts. Like, it's amazing. Now, I get it. If I went into a time machine and brought this up 12 years ago, we'd say, who cares? But in this day and age, with a rotation that does not go deep into games, I am going to marvel. And I am going to celebrate David Peterson getting outs in the seventh inning. I do not apologize for that. The Alonso thing, look, Alonso, it's more about when he made that miscue with Senga, and Pete thought he got him hurt. And obviously he's made other miscues. I think there was a concern that this thing was mental. The fact that he's gone out and made every play, even though they are easy plays, no question about it, I think is just a good sign that he hasn't let it get to his head. All right, let's get to the net negative first. I want to get that out of the way. We hand out those 2 prestigious honors after every series, win or lose. I think the net negative is very straightforward. I don't think there's any other option. I think it's got to be poor Reed Garrett. I don't think there's any other option. If you go back to game 1 of the doubleheader, Reed Garrett comes in with a 2-1 lead, runner on first, 1 out. After Clay Holmes was pulled, he immediately gives up an RBI double. He gives up a hit, walks a guy, gives up a grand slam. Like, it doesn't get worse than that. It was an implosion. It obviously contributed to the 1 loss in this series, set a terrible tone in this series. So we could look at anybody else and any other stat you want to look at. I think it is unanimous that it's Reed Garrett for the net negative. You agree with that one, Hoff?
Not fully.
Really?
Yeah, because I got to be honest. You know who had a really rough series?
Go ahead.
Brett Beatty. He went 0 for 8.
Mm-hmm.
His defense wasn't that great. I know he got an RBI, but like, I just think he's a nothing burger again. Like, he's absolutely doing nothing for this team.
And that error that he committed in the 4th inning we talked about could have been a huge swing in this game. It allowed the Brewers to tie it. I think he gets an honorable mention. I'm not going to defend Brett Beatty's series and how he's gone backwards, but you're telling me that's worse than what Reed Garrett did? He lit a game on fire and then pissed all over it. Like, what do we...
Well, he had a chance every day to do something, and he chose not to.
I get it. I get it. Look, honorable mention of Brett Beatty doing nothing. I ain't going to dispute that. But I'm sorry. Reed Garrett lost them a game.
He did suck, didn't he?
I think the I'm the man now star of the series is more interesting. So let's start with Brandon Nimmo because he's such an obvious candidate and a deserving candidate. He, like everybody else, took an offer in game 1 of the doubleheader. Basically, everybody did. Nobody did anything other than Pete, who drove a run in. He was 0 for 4, but he hits the grand slam in game 2, a real kind of series-changing grand slam when you think about it, because you're in the bottom of the 2nd inning. There's 2 outs and nobody on. You're facing this kid, Jacob Misarowski, who's been amazing. You're using an opener, and all of a sudden, Beatty draws a walk, Mauricio draws a walk, and Hayden Senger gets so fortunate by hitting a comebacker that Misarowski just can't make the play on. And so you're given this golden opportunity with bases loaded and 2 out. And Brandon Nimmo, it's a grand slam. You talk about taking advantage of an opportunity. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And it relaxed Citi Field. It caused like a new hope, a new belief. And even though it would get dicey, the Brewers were playing from behind from that moment. It was, I mean, you could argue, Hoff, that grand slam may go down as one of the most important hits of the season. Now, I get it's the second inning, but when you remind yourself about where this team was and even how you felt in the midst of the early innings of that doubleheader with an opener on the mound facing Missorowski, it felt like they were going to lose again. It felt like it was going to be a 5-game losing streak. And that Brandon Nimmo swing on a lot of levels was one of the most important swings of the year. So he hits that grand slam, gets another base hit in the game, steals a base, and obviously set the tone again in game 3 of this series by hitting a solo home run, his second home run of the series. And even though he left guys on base, as we touched in the 6th and the 8th inning, because that grand slam, like I said, is one of the most important hits of the year, and then sets the tone in game 3, Brandon Nimmo is clear favorite for the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. But he's not the only one. There really isn't anyone else offensively. You know, Francisco Lindor, obviously, after moving to the 2-hole, went 4 for 8, home run, 3 RBIs, pretty good. Juan Soto ends up in this series going, well, he went 2 for 4 in the finale with an RBI, the game-winning hit. 1 for 3 with 2 walks in game 2, 0 for 3 with a walk in game 1. Pete drove in a couple of big runs. But the other candidates are Edwin Diaz. I mean, Edwin Diaz, I don't know, man. We may have to give it to Edwin Diaz over Brandon Nimmo. He gets a 4-out save in game 1, or game 2, I should say, the doubleheader, in which at the moment when Diaz comes in, it's a dicey situation. There's 2 men on base in a 6-3 game. He comes in with the tying run at the plate, and he gets a huge strikeout against Jake Bauers, and then pitches a 1-2-3 ninth inning with a 4-run lead, and then, of course, protects the 1-run lead in the finale of this series. So I think Edwin Diaz deserves certainly consideration. David Peterson deserves consideration for pitching into the 7th inning. Even to a degree, Blade Tidwell. More honorable mention for Blade Tidwell. I know he ends up giving up a couple of runs, but he really ate up 4 incredibly important innings until he gave up the back-to-back home runs in the 6th inning. And the other guy's Ryan Stanek. He wasn't great because, remember, he did force Diaz to have to come into the game, but he did get 2 big outs in the 8th inning and obviously got 4 outs in the finale of this series. So I think all those guys are candidates. It probably does come down to Edwin Diaz and Brandon Nimmo. Let's see if Hoff, who hates Brandon Nimmo, will actually give Nimmo credit. Who is the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series, Pete?
The suspense is building. I'm going to say Edwin Diaz. If you're going to give me those guys, I'm going to say Edwin Diaz. I'd like to give it to Francisco Lindor because I feel like he did. You say that, you know, Nimmo did set the tone with that home run on Thursday, plus the grand slam. Clearly, those are 2 huge hits. But I would also say that Lindor helped just as much on the second game of the doubleheader, and he continued the rally that Juan Soto ended up getting a big hit, and then Alonso got a big hit after that too. And gave, you know, I like Lindor a lot, but I'm an Edwin Diaz guy. I'm selling myself on not Nimmo.
I want you to do me a favor. All right. Let's get a little interactive here on the Rico Brogna. There are a few emails very split on this. There's Edwin Diaz, there's Brandon Nimmo, and I totally understand both sides. Can you ask, or at least I'll ask, if you are consuming the Rico live on YouTube? Okay, so this is a little special for the live audience. If you downloaded the podcast, I'm sorry. It's already been decided. Can you give me a little sense on the comments if we ask the people, is it Brandon Nimmo as the I'm the Man Now star of the series, or is it Edwin Diaz? Like, what's the sense you get from the people consuming the Rico Brogna right now if we ask them Diaz or Nimmo? What's the sense you get?
I see Diaz gets thrown out there. Oof. Nimmo, Diaz. It's kind of Nimmo. It's kind of now okay. Now it's more heavier Nimmo, but it was Diaz first a little bit too. It's kind of split, but Nimmo may get the win on that.
The reason I want to give it to Brandon Nimmo and Edwin Diaz made a major impact on this series. I love Edwin Diaz, and it's a shame that Edwin Diaz has only won this award one time. And the one time Edwin Diaz won it was actually the first ever Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series, the opening series against the Astros when he pitched a 1-2-3 save in the only win they got in that series. Diaz deserves this more often, but the reason I think it's Brandon Nimmo is because I do think that if this season is turning right now, and there's no guarantee it is, like it's great they won back-to-back games. They won back-to-back games against the Braves. And obviously they crapped that one away by getting swept by the Pirates in overwhelming fashion. So there's no guarantee this season is turning, but I do think Nimmo's grand slam was one of the most important swings of the year. And I think that because that just that one moment and the way it turned that game and turned that series, it would be a disservice for it not to be Brandon Nimmo based on just the importance of that grand slam and even the home run he hit in the finale of this series. It's 0-0, bottom of the second inning, first pitch home run. So I do think it's Brandon Nimmo. I think it's very close, but Brandon Nimmo is the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. And are you ready for this? It's only his second time he's won it. I'm looking at our history right now. Brandon Nimmo won it in the Pittsburgh Pirates series that they won 2 out of 3 back at Citi Field. So he is now a 2-time winner. And I'm going to do this right now because it's fun to do every once in a while. I'm going to very quickly read off all the Rico I'm the Man Now stars of the series. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Lost 2 out of 3 to the Astros, Edwin Diaz. Won 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, Pete Alonso. Swept the Blue Jays, Max Kranick. Won 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, Pete Alonso. Won 2 out of 3 against the A's, Kodai Senga. Lost 2 out of 3 to the Twins, Pete Alonso. Swept the Cardinals of 4, Francisco Lindor. Swept the Phillies of 3, Francisco Lindor. Split a 4-gamer with the Nationals, Francisco Alvarez. Lost 2 out of 3 to Arizona, Tyrone Taylor. Lost 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals, Pete Alonso. Won 2 out of 3 against Arizona, Juan Soto. Won 2 out of 3 against the Cubs, Brett Beatty. Won 2 out of 3 against the Pirates, Brandon Nimmo. Lost 2 out of 3 to the Yankees, Huascar Brazoban. Lost 2 out of 3 to the Red Sox, Brett Beatty. Won 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, David Peterson. Won 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, the since DFA'd Jose Castillo. Swept the Rockies, Lindor. Split with the Dodgers, Alonso. Swept the Rockies, Lindor. Swept the Nationals, Peterson. Got swept by the Rays, Starling Marte. Got swept by the Braves, Tyrone Taylor. Lost 2 out of 3 to the Phillies, Juan Soto. Split with the Braves, Juan Soto. Got swept by the Pirates, Brandon Waddell. And finally, Brandon Nimmo winning a series against Milwaukee.
Good job. Hey, by the way, just because you mentioned Marte was one of the stars of the series, did you like the fact that the past 3 games they've had 3 different leadoff hitters?
Well, do I like it? Yes. Oh, I loved it. What I'm wrestling with is obviously Mendy made the decision to switch the lineup up and move Lindor to 2, and Lindor's responded. So that has worked. And I definitely think that because Lindor prefers to just stay in one spot, that they should just keep Lindor in the 2-hole right now. And if you're going to keep everybody at 2, 3, 4, which is Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, it leads to, all right, who do you want to lead off? I don't love the idea of Starling Marte leading off. I know Marte did a good job in this game. He got on base twice at 2 hits. But overall, like, it's not preferable to me. I think the 2 other guys, if you're not going to lead off any of the big 3, I think the 2 guys that jump out at me are Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil. The problem is the numbers are the numbers. I mean, Brandon Nimmo's numbers against lefties this year are just not that good. And so you're basically playing the platoon game if you're Carlos Mendoza. Jeff McNeil's an interesting one. So McNeil didn't play in this game, and very quietly, Jeff McNeil's had a pretty good season. His numbers against lefties, and this has been the case throughout his career, it's not new, they're better than they are against righties. I'll give you the splits real quick. Against lefties, Jeff McNeil is sitting .320 with a .370 on base and .850 OPS. Against righties, he's only hitting .247, .339 on base, .812 OPS. So I know it sounds crazy because they're both lefties. I'm kind of thinking Brandon Nimmo should lead off against righties and Jeff McNeil should lead off against lefties, as weird as that is. And I also think that Mendy should pay more attention to that because why was McNeil out of the lineup against a left-hander like Quintana? They're about to face two lefties in the Yankee series, Rodon and Fried, but I just don't love Marte in the leadoff spot, despite his speed and despite what he did in Game 3, because I think overall he's just not good enough to be a leadoff hitter.
No, I know, and I don't really know anybody else. I mean, and I know you said McNeil, but I really don't know who else would lead off that's a right-handed bat versus, I mean, again, besides Lindor, I don't know who else you'd lead off to against a lefty that's a right-handed bat.
I mean, unfortunately, it would basically be Starling Marte. I mean, that's unless you just keep Nimmo and say, you know what, you're going to lead off against lefties and righties, despite the splits not being very good. Now, in the past, Nimmo's hit lefties, so you could also look at this year's splits and say, what does it really mean? But keep an eye on this. So they're facing Max Fried on Sunday. They've faced Max Fried a lot. Like, obviously, Max Fried's an old division rival. So you got a lot of sample size in terms of what guys have done against him. Just to look ahead, Jeff McNeil is 11 for 32. That's a 344 batting average in his career against Max Fried. On the other end of things, Brandon Nimmo is 3 for 29, which is a 103 batting average against Max Fried. So that's a huge difference. And if you want Marte, because Marte's got experience against him too, he's only 5 for 23 with a 217 batting average. So truthfully, based on those numbers, McNeil should lead off, but I'm going to give you the Max Fried numbers that jump out at me the most. Francisco Lindor. Are you ready for this?
I'm scared.
You should be. 3 for 31, an 097 batting average, 097 on base. He has never drawn a walk against Max Fried. Not good.
You know what? I think that Sunday's a good day for Nimmo and Lindor to have a day off.
Or they're due to beat him up.
Oh, that too.
It's funny. The Yankees come into the Subway Series obviously struggling. They've lost 4 straight games. They're going to get in for the 4th of July game very late at night. But these pitching matchups are disastrous on paper for the Mets. I let's just call it like it is. And it's baseball, so you never know. I mean, look what happened in the Blade Tidwell, Jacob Misarowski game. But right now, the Mets are going to have to face Fried and Rodon. Both guys have had really good years. And their counter is going to be Frankie Montas and God knows who on Sunday against Fried. And even the opener of this series is Marcus Stroman, who's pitched well against the Mets briefly in his revenge starts against the bullpen game. So I hate to sound like a real loser right now, Hoff. Get me just a win in this series, and I think I'd be okay with it.
I need more. I do. I think that, and I know that you said this as well, so I'm not stealing it, but I do feel like this is a huge upswing to whoever wins this series. I feel like this is going to just change the season for them. I feel like this is the Jets-Giants of 2011, you may say. But I truly feel that way because both of these teams are 6-14 out of the last 20 games. They've both been playing terrible baseball. They're identical, basically.
So my analogy to 2011 that you just copied is actually very different than yours because I don't think this is going to change the trajectory of each season. Like, this isn't going to end up being like Christmas Eve, Giants-Jets. It's just not. What I said earlier, I said this on the Fan on Evan and Tiki was, hey, this is such a weird Subway Series because both teams come in not playing their best baseball. Granted, the Mets are now on a 2-game winning streak, but still, they're not playing their best baseball. What does this remind you of? And look, the Mets and the Yankees have played a lot of Subway Series, so there have been plenty in which both teams have not been playing well or both teams don't have huge expectations. Just think back to 2023. Like, the 2023 Subway Series kind of sucked. The Mets were terrible. The Yankees were actually having a down year for their standards, obviously eventually missed the playoffs. So it's not unusual to have a Subway Series where both teams are not at their best. But the reason why it reminded me of Jets-Giants, obviously also not late in the season, is that both teams can win the World Series. You know what I mean? Like, the Jets in 2011 were coming off back-to-back AFC championship games, and while they were struggling and they were average, my attitude going into that game was, boy, we win this game and make the playoffs. Why not us? Why can't we go on a run? And I think despite all the Met flaws right now, most of us probably think the same thing, which is, just make the playoffs. You never know. You get hot at the right time. Yankee fans think the same thing, especially in the American League. So my comp on Jets-Giants is more about that than it is the importance of this series. Look, here's a reality that no one wants to admit because of the prices and because of making fun of your brothers and sisters. The series the Mets just played and the series the Yankees just played were more important than this series. It is. Like, there are no tiebreakers. There's no competing with each other in the standings. They're just 3 games against the team. And I'd like to win them, but the reason I said just get me all win is because beating the Royals and the Orioles next week counts the same. And there'll be more favorable pitching matchups once they get there. Because when they get to Baltimore, Clay Holmes will pitch. David Peterson will pitch. And obviously we'll see in Kansas City if we get Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. So pitching matchups can be overrated. Obviously, they did win a game against Missorowski with Tidwell on the mound. But it doesn't feel good. Like, can the Mets pound Max Fried? Sure. Sure they can. That'd be great. It'd be nice to see the Met offense actually do that. But other than making fun of your friends and the New York rivalry, let's not act like these games are the end-all, be-all. I'm telling you right now, without the emotion yet of the Subway Series, the Brewer games mattered more.
Yeah, I feel like, however, it's the Mets are about to build momentum right here. They just won their first series in what? How many series? It's been like 3 or 4 series since they've won. 4 series since they won. They got swept first. The Rays. The Braves. They lost to the Phillies. Yeah,
4 losses and a push, because remember they split with Atlanta.
Split the Braves,
so it was 5 consecutive series that they did not win going back to the Washington series.
So it's been a while. They finally win a series versus the Brewers. We talked about this with Nimmo setting the tone with the home run on Thursday, the grand slam on Wednesday with the second game of the doubleheader. Like, there is that thing called momentum. And I think that if you lose 2 or 3 to the Yankees, depending on how you lose, it could just bring you back in a funk again, which I don't think the Mets are just on that teetering, slide right now. They're back and forth.
Yeah, look, I want to win games. Don't get me wrong. It's daunting when you think about what they're going to try to do, because in the opener of this series, like I said earlier, Edwin Diaz and Ryan Stanek are probably not going to be available. So you're talking about trying to get 27 outs from the likes of Justin Hagenman and Brandon Waddell and Huascar Brazoban and Jose Butto. And it's baseball. I mean, that would be an awful Yankee loss if all of a sudden they score 1 or 2 runs against the cavalcade of that. By the way, how about this weird fact? The Mets are done playing National League teams until after the All-Star break, because they're about to play 3 games against the Yankees, take an off day Monday, go to Baltimore to play 3 games, and then go to Kansas City to play 3 games. So the Mets are actually about to do, I'll throw another thing about these games. They're about to have 3 consecutive World Series rematches. The rematch of 2000, the rematch of 1969, and the rematch of 2015. How about that? All we need is Oakland and Boston, and we can complete the rematch tour, if you will. But
looking forward to it.
Yeah, 9 games coming up, all against American League teams. I would be thrilled if they could go 5-4 in these next 9 games. I'd probably even sign for 4-5, just because the state of the pitching, just because of where the pitching is. That's why I kind of have that very loose expectation. But you never know. Maybe the Mets will knock one out of the ballpark this weekend, and you can knock one out of the park and raise the apple with Takara Chuhai, a sparkling cocktail that blends real shochu spirits with the delicious flavors of fruits locally grown in Japan. It's available at Citi Field, of course, in Fuji Apple, which is my favorite, white peach, and lemon. So here's the deal. The deal is I'm going to Europe, and I'm going to watch every single Met game at odd times in Europe. And as I said to Pete Hoffman, and as I will certainly say to the Rico Brogna audience, I am going to try to do Rico Brogna's from Europe, especially for our series recaps. Instant reactions may be a little bit more difficult, but keep it right here. Pete Hoffman has free reign to do instant reaction Ricos whenever the hell he deems necessary. But after Mets Yankees, At some point, I plan on doing a Rico from France. After Mets Orioles, I plan on doing a Rico from Spain. And after Mets Royals, I plan on doing a Rico from Italy. And I will do my best for the YouTube audience to give you a background that makes you realize, wow, he really is in Europe. So we will do our best to continue to feed the Rico Brogna as we are away. I do also want to acknowledge one other thing. Every once in a while, we receive emails at thericob@gmail.com from newer listeners who say, hey, why is it called Rico Brogna? What's the deal with that? So the deal with that is I loved Rico Brogna. Rico was a tremendous first baseman defensively for the New York Mets, later for the Philadelphia Phillies. And in honoring the great Rico Brogna, a guy I tried to play first base like when I was a kid, we named this Met podcast Rico Brogna. We honor him. We honor Mets history, even the guys who aren't going to have their numbers retired. So for anyone who's new to the Rico Brogna is a former Met. You could look it up, go to Baseball Reference. And he's appeared on the Rico Brogna as well. You can go back into the archives. One of the earlier episodes, Rico came on it, talked about his career. So that's why it's called Rico Brogna.
Right. It's not for Rico Garcia, who was called up recently by the Mets.
No, but Rico Garcia certainly has a warm place in our hearts. And when he comes in to face the Yankees in game 1 of the Subway Series, let's hope he actually gets a few outs and doesn't implode.
Yes. Yeah, that would be really nice for many different reasons. We'd like to get a win here and there.
Absolutely. I'd love to see Rico Garcia maybe shock the world and win the I'm the Man Now star of the series. That'd be fantastic. So we'll see if that can happen. Enjoy the Subway Series. Enjoy the 4th of July. Again, we will continue the Rico Brogna through a little summer vacation. But as always, you can email us thoughts, opinions on the team, on the podcast, of course, thericob@gmail.com. And remember to subscribe to the Rico Brogna. There's lots of ways you can access our podcast now. We just made a deal with iHeart and TuneIn. You can get the Rico there. Obviously, the Odyssey app. Obviously, wherever you download your podcasts. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening to a happy edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.